So I'm talking to this guy on the internet, right? And we start talking about politics and world stuff, and he mentioned something called suicide nets. And I'm like, suicide nets? That sounds weird. So I search it up on Google, right? It leads me to this company, Foxconn. Now, it's called Han High Precision Industry Co. Ltd, right? Alright, that's the official title. Foxconn Technology Group. Now, what's so cool about Foxconn? What's so interesting about them? Why not CatCon? Why not DogCon? Hold your horses, okay? This is the thing. Foxconn factories manufactured an estimated 40% of all consumer electronics sold worldwide. That means 40% of all consumer electronics. Now, it even says here they got iPads, iPhones. I think in Apple's case, it's something like 70% of their manufacturing, I think. PlayStations, Xbox, Wii's, BlackBerry, dude, Kindle. They got everything. Everything basically is being manufactured, at least in part, by Foxconn. They have a huge global influence. And by the way, their revenue in 2017, 4.7 trillion, my dude. Okay, so they're a big thing. Now, there were suicides by the employees in Foxconn, and this is the controversy. Now, you see, pre-2010 there were a few. Somebody hung themselves in the company bathroom. Another person threw themselves off of an apartment building after losing an iPhone prototype in their possession. And prior to death, he claimed he was beaten and his residence was searched by Foxconn employees. You know, because iPhone prototypes, you wouldn't want to lose that very valuable, right? Money, we gotta make a profit. That's the big justifier. But this is what happened. That was pre-2010. Now, this is what happened. There was a big spike. It's like everything just reached a boiling point. And you have all of these people threw themselves from the building, threw themselves from the building, threw herself from the building, threw himself from the building, threw herself, threw himself. All of these suicides from the building, man. All of these suicides. So, what, and by the way, and this continues. So, what is Foxconn to do about this? Now, this is sad. Like, people, their employees are throwing themselves off of the building, committing suicide. They're unhappy. So how do you respond to that? Maybe, I don't know, should we get them counseling? Should we do something? Should we change our labor standards? They put out nets, my dude. They put out nets outside of the window. I'm like laughing as a coping mechanism because this is like such a weird thing to believe. They put out nets outside of the buildings so that people couldn't jump off of them to commit suicide, my dude. This is real. Look, they put out nets, my dude. Look, this one was shot on an iPhone 6. Somebody took this picture of the nets. Like, they probably manufactured this phone and then took a picture. Look at this. This is like, dude, putting a net outside of a building so that people won't commit suicide. This is like if you don't want your girlfriend to cheat on you with your best friend and you kill your best friend so that she doesn't have the option. Or you don't want her to cheat on you with any guy, so you just kill every guy you see. Like, the problem isn't with the guys, the problem is with your girlfriend, right? That she's not trustworthy. So this is the thing. The problem isn't that they don't have enough methods. Or that they have too many methods, I mean. The problem isn't that it's so available. Suicide is just so readily available to them. It's too easy for them to commit suicide. Like, that's not the problem. The problem is that they want to commit suicide, right? That just seems obvious, right? Anybody watch it? The problem is that they want to kill themselves. It's not that they don't have enough, it's not that they have too many methods. Now listen, so why do they want to commit suicide? Let me get into that. Why do they want to commit suicide? So, a company's probe into the supplier's labor practices were published in early 2010. Now, Foxconn wasn't specifically named in the report, but Apple suggested, because Apple has a lot of their manufacturing here, and they were looking into their manufacturers. Apple suggested poor treatment of workers in facilities that manufacture its products may include violations of labor laws, violations of Apple's own rules for suppliers, and child labor, right? Workers as young as 14. Apple committed to the implementation of changes following the suicides, but in late 2014, news reports of labor issues at another factory of a Chinese supplier also surfaced. So, and I'm gonna touch on that later in the video, where it's not just about Foxconn. Now, let's see. The 2010 suicides prompted, some universities, they made a report on Foxconn in which they described it as a labor camp. Okay, they interviewed 1,800 workers at 12 factories and found evidence of illegal overtime and failure to report accidents. They also criticized the management style, which was called inhumane and abusive. Right. And by the way, another audit performed by the Fair Labor Association at the request of Apple, by the way. They asked, right? Because they need to respond to this somehow. So they request this audit. This suggested that workplace accidents might be commonplace and that workers may consider overtime pay insufficient. So there's a theme, and a lot of this stuff I was looking at, by the way, I looked on different websites and whatnot. There's a theme of there being like longer hours, unfair treatment, and just, I mean, overall crappy conditions that I guess people, you know, living in a society that requires money, being born into the social contract, you know, they're kind of compelled to interact in some way, to work into a factory, and this is like the option that they have, right? So anyways, let me give a counter argument, because I don't want to just present one huge, you know, idea, right? Because somebody could argue. So I looked at some of the different analysis, this and some other websites, and there are some arguments that say that, well, the suicide rate in China in general is actually like, you know, already pretty high. So it was pretty much, those suicides are kind of consistent with the suicide rate in China in general. So it's not really Foxconn's fault. It's just like that in China in general. And another place showed that they said that the Foxconn incidents, though, did spike above the average, though. But here's the thing. That argument to me doesn't make sense, because what makes a country, my dude? What makes a country? Now, besides the people, besides the culture, industry, what they're doing, money, you know, jobs. Like, this is a big part. The work is a big part of countries. Now, when you have Foxconn, by the way, the world's largest contract manufacturer of electronics. Let me reset the music there, by the way. I had some music playing in the background, my dude. Now, look at this. When you have the world's largest contract manufacturer of electronics, factories in several countries, mostly in mainland China, where it employs 1.2 million people, largest private employer and exporter. Okay, the CEO has a net worth of 10.6 billion. All right, when you have a major company like this, is this not shaping China? Is this not a reflection of a overall deeply rooted, I don't know, corporate culture? You know what I mean? Like, this is the thing. It was emphasized in different points too. Like, not all of the manufacturing is done by Foxconn. There's tons of other places too, and you think that they differ? I mean, this is like an industry standard, basically. I mean, when you have something so large like this, and they have found, and you always hear about that. You always hear about, you know, there being maybe sweatshops somewhere, there being unfair labor practices somewhere where our stuff is manufactured, especially, you know, in the West here, our stuff is manufactured over, and we hear about unfair labor practices, but we don't really know what's going on, my dude. We don't really know what's going on. But here's the thing. These suicides, it's like, that's why that argument is so bad, to say that, okay, because suicides in general are bad in China, Foxconn isn't really at fault. Foxconn and companies like Foxconn and their unfair labor practices and that whole culture is the reason in the first place why that suicide rate is that way. It's not an isolated incident. It's not an isolated company. It's a cross. It reflects a much larger picture. You see what I'm saying? And this ties in. Now you might be saying, okay, this is out there. That's bad that we're buying from them. Maybe we should stop buying from them. But listen, this isn't about just China. This isn't about just labor practices everywhere in the world either. It's, you know, it's even about some of our culture in the US. Now, because this is something I notice a lot, right? We live in a capitalist society, and everything seems to be so justified by the profit incentive. Okay, everything is just like, as long as it's good for the sake of business, it's good. You know what I mean? Even if somebody's doing something unethical, they're just doing it because it's their job, right? Or if somebody's doing something that's a little shady, it's like, well, they're just trying to make money. They're running a business, not a charity. You know, so much is justified in the name of making a profit. And in fact, the system kind of runs on greed. Like, we've glorified greed. You know what I mean? Despite all of the, you know, wisdoms in history telling us that greed is wrong, we've glorified greed and we actually encourage it. Profit incentive. Go for it. Just like, be industrious, be ambitious, amass as much wealth as you can get, be materialistic. It's encouraged everywhere we see. Our ideals, the ideals that we look up to, and the ideals that we kind of worship in a way, right? Because you hear in the different religions, and I'm saying this secularly, you hear in the different religions, don't take any God but God, right? But what is the other gods now? What are we worshiping now? Money, right? Fame, right? All of these things that we put our faith in, that we submit ourselves to, that we're worshiping in a sense, that we're striving for, that control our actions, right? We do things in the name of money. We do things in the name of fame. We do things in the name of these idols that have been given to us by the culture, by our surroundings, right? All of these are things we're worshiping, man. And I just think something is really wrong with how we're prioritizing money and how we're prioritizing these superficial things over human life. And I think that these Foxconn incidents are a reflection of that. I mean, we don't even know where our products are coming from. We don't even know that this is happening. And it's like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do about it, man? What would be good, right? Because, listen, we vote with our dollar, right? What would be good is if we could all unite somehow and I guess focus our money in such a way that we're not funding things that we would all find just common sense, by a common sense standard, unethical, right? Like working conditions that would drive people to commit suicide and whatnot, right? Because you know what's interesting? After Foxconn was called out on this, after, you have different universities and different things publicizing this, they did raise wages for some of the workers, at least in that area, which is interesting. And they actually tried to play it off and say, oh no, it's not because of this thing. It's like, yeah, really good timing that right after you have an influx of suicides, you decide, and all of this publicity, that you decide to, raise wages. Because before that, they weren't saying anything anyway. They were just trying to do no comment, right? Because they have all this power. And like, this is the thing, man. I won't say too much more. I think things won't change unless we change. You know what I mean? As long as we're supporting unfair business practices, as long as we're supporting a culture and consuming things in such a way that we're supplying, that we're giving the demand to receive the supply, that supply is just going to keep coming. As long as we're offering demand, supply is going to keep coming. And you know what? Individually, it may seem hard. Like, what are we going to do? Just like boycott iPhone or boycott any, thing manufactured by some of these places. At least let's be conscious of it. And that's hopefully what this video was doing too. I just want to bring awareness to this because this is a real thing. This is a recent thing. This isn't like historical, right? This is a recent thing. Let's at least be aware. Let's be aware of this and where our money is going and what is behind that, dude. And what are we adhering to? What culture are we operating our beliefs by? And what standards are we comparing ourselves to? Are we operating based off of that profit over human life? As long as it's in the name of business, it's okay. You know what I mean? Because a lot of the time, it's like we're kept in such a way where things are just good enough for, people not to revolt, but for the businesses to do exactly, as they like. And that might sound good, but like, it's not like people not to revolt because, everything is genuinely fulfilled. It's like people not to revolt because they're so distracted, they're brainwashed, as long as they have food and circus, as they say, that's like old expression in like Rome, then the people won't revolt, you know what I mean? As long as they're chasing with the illusion that maybe they'll get a piece of that exclusive 1% pie, then, everything is okay because they're on the run. They're on the run for that. Anyways, that's all. Thank you very much for watching this. Take care. Okay.